The Indian Foreign Service, known as IFS, is the core of Indian civil servants who serve in the Ministry of External Affairs and represent the country abroad as diplomats. Established on October 9, 1946, IFS today celebrates its 74 years. Over these 7 decades, the service has seen India, the largest democracy in the world, emerging as the modern nation we see today. The service works round the clock across different geographies and represents the government and people of India around the world. The service functions as spokesperson of India to the world. It works as the first line of defense of the country. It pursues the country's economic interests abroad and showcases India's vibrant culture to the world. From the halls of the United Nations to various capitals of the world, IFS officers work 24/7 as foot soldiers of the country. Around the world, service remains a call away for Indians, leading from the front in times of distress. The ongoing pandemic led to unprecedented disruptions in international travel, with hundreds of thousands of Indian nationals stranded overseas. The Ministry of External Affairs and the service promptly rose to the occasion, created a 24/7 special COVID cell in March to help stranded Indians abroad, and then took up the massive evacuation operation called Vande Bharat Mission in May 2020. The service was at the front lines of managing the crisis as first responders. Under the Vande Bharat mission, more than 17 lakh Indians have been brought back by air, sea and land across multiple borders. During the pandemic, Indian pharma industry emerged as an asset not only for India but also for the whole world. As India converted the crisis into an opportunity, IFS officers and their teams worked with other government agencies and the private sector. India, as the pharmacy to the world, provided medicines and COVID-19 protective masks and equipment to more than 150 countries during the pandemic, overcoming daunting logistical challenges. With a glorious record of serving the country with distinction, the service is also an equal opportunity employer. It is a great pride for the service that it has produced President and Vice President of India, Speaker of Lok Sabha, ministers, parliamentarians, noted authors, scholars, historians and international public servants from its ranks.
भारत के विदेश मंत्रालय ने मानवता की दृष्टि से नई ऊंचाइयों को प्राप्त किया है। हिंदुस्तानी दुनिया के किसी भी देश में कहीं न कहीं संकट में फंसे तो प्रोएक्टिव होकर के भारत सरकार उनको सही सलामत ले आई और अपने घरों में उनको वापस ले गई।
The IFS Day is an occasion for all the officers of the service to rededicate themselves to serving India and its people. Today we remember those who serve in it and with it to keep India's flag flying high, always. Jai Hind!
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vishakha Yaduvanshi, and I'm Indian Foreign Service Officer, currently serving as First Secretary in the High Commission of India, London. Today, we are celebrating Indian Foreign Service Day, one of the most coveted services in India, which was created on this day in 1946. In September 1946, on the eve of India's independence, the Government of India decided to create a service for India's diplomatic, consular, and commercial representation overseas, and thus emerged an esteemed service, Indian Foreign Service. Following that, there was a near seamless transformation of the Foreign and Political Department of the British Indian government into what then became the new Ministry of External Affairs and Commonwealth Relations. We have come a long way since then, from telegrams to texts, from emails to e-envoys. The Indian Foreign Service has achieved many milestones. with the latest being the repatriation of Indian nationals from abroad during the global pandemic of COVID-19. Till date, under Vande Bharat mission, we have successfully repatriated around 2 million Indians globally, including around 50,000 from the UK itself, who in these testing times wanted to be closer to their families and their homeland. In this backdrop, and to celebrate this significant day in the Indian diplomatic service, we are delighted to have two eminent diplomats of India and the United Kingdom. We have with us the first woman career diplomat of India to UK, Mrs. Ruchi Ghanshyam, and her contemporary, a distinguished diplomat of the UK, the Honorable Sir Dominic Asquith. Ambassador Ruchi Ghanshyam joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1982. In a career spanning nearly 36 years, she served in various capacities in the Indian embassies of Nepal, Brussels, Islamabad, New York, Ghana, South Africa, and UK. Ambassador Mrs. Ruchi Ghanshyam is married to Ambassador A.R. Ghanshyam, who is also a retired IFS officer. The Honorable Sir Dominic Asquith, former ambassador to Iraq, Egypt, and Libya, in his illustrious career also served in Riyadh, Buenos Aires, Washington, Muscat, Damascus, New Delhi, and FCO in various capacities. He is married to Mrs. Louise Asquith, and they have 4 children. A warm welcome to both of you, and thank you for taking out time today. We are joined by the High Commission officers today, and recording of this video will be posted on social media. I would now like to request you to talk about your experiences in the Foreign Service and your life as a diplomat. We would love to hear about any interesting moments you might want to share with us. We can start with ma'am, with your permission, sir.
Is that okay for you, Dominic? Can I start?
Please
okay.
do. Please
Okay.
do.
Well, as Vishakha mentioned, I joined the Foreign Service in 1982. My husband is also a Foreign Service officer from the 1982 batch. So I think the very first gift which the Foreign Service has given to me is a very happily married life. And it was also very good of our ministry that we have been posted always together. We never had to spend a single day away from each other because we were posted in 2 different countries. We were always posted together. So that is one of the positives of the Indian Foreign Service, because I think this liberal attitude was adopted by the government of India much, much earlier than many, many other countries, many Western advanced countries as well. Our first posting was to Damascus. And I just realized that I have that in common with you, Dominic, because my husband and I, we both studied Arabic, and we were both first early, to start with, 3rd secretaries and then 2nd secretaries in our embassy in Damascus. I think 1 year of our tenure probably coincided with yours in Damascus. Well, we didn't know each other at that time, but I think that was righted by us serving our 2 countries in our respective countries, at the same time. And I think that was my good fortune. It was really wonderful to have a very detailed briefing from Sir Dominic Asquith when he was High Commissioner here. And I must say that was probably the very first briefing of such an exhaustive nature that I had been given by any counterpart of mine before. The Foreign Service, of course, gave us many opportunities, and there are so many things that I don't think it is even possible to highlight the important events or important incidents from my career in this short format that we have. So let me confine myself to the experience in the UK itself, and then if there are opportunities, we can talk about other things. So UK was an exceptionally interesting posting for me. It was when we first landed, I think it was 17th of November, if I'm not mistaken, 2017. And on that day, I think 3 or 4 ministers from the UK cabinet had resigned. So the first thing that the protocol people wanted to do when we reached the lounge was to switch on the news and to see what was happening in UK. So that's the middle of the Brexit developments that I landed in. For my introduction to UK started with that in UK. I had earlier worked on UK in the ministry. And departure, of course, was in the middle of a global pandemic, because I came back to India on an evacuation flight, one of the Vande Bharat flights that you mentioned, Vishakha. And in between, there were many interesting developments, because, there were elections, and a new prime minister was elected, and a number of other interesting developments happened. I think I'll skip the details for now. Perhaps the most important or most memorable moment, and probably it would be one of the most, or if not the most memorable moment of my entire career, was the presentation of credentials to Her Majesty the Queen. I don't know, maybe some other countries also do it with the same kind of courtesy and old world charm and style. But certainly in UK, it is really something that it's an unforgettable experience. The respect with which the diplomats are received, and the graciousness with which Her Majesty receives her high commissioners and ambassadors, I think that is something to cherish. It's very special ride in the buggy that she sends, carriage that she sends. And it's very special because the high commissioners get 4 horses instead of 2 like other people do. So that was, I think, one of the most memorable moments for me.
In various guises, or West Asia for you, as a diplomat, as a teacher, as a political analyst. And then when I joined the Foreign Office in '83, they saw my curriculum vitae and pushed me back in to the Middle East, actually against my will, but I've never regretted it for a moment. And I'd had a slightly, how do I say, a fiery baptism into the Middle East, because I'd arrived in Lebanon the day the civil war started in 1975. And it seems a little bit that my association with the Middle East has always been somewhat explosive, because my first posting, as Rushi says, was in Damascus, but it was 2 months before we broke relations with the Syrians. And I ended up staying on looking after what was then a British interest section, looked after by the Australians. And it was a real test of resilience, but it was one of the most exciting times. So it was an introduction into the excitement of diplomacy. I think the sort of period where I would just single out and just describe a little bit is that period when I was in my mid to late 30s, and was private secretary to one of our ministers. He was the #2 minister in the Foreign Office, and it was the period from right at the beginning of 1990 to the middle of '92. And just put your mind back to that period. I arrived in that job for a minister who was looking after what was the Soviet Union, became the ex-Soviet Union, NATO, terrorism, the Middle East, Africa. So I arrived with him just as the Berlin Wall had come down, and the whole revolution of how Europe looked. As I came into his office, F.W. de Klerk in South Africa gave, right at the beginning of February 1990, the speech that effectively heralded the end of apartheid. So Africa was completely changing. And then the first summer, August 1990, was when Saddam invaded Kuwait. And for the next 6 months, till the end of February, of course, was the build-up to and then the fighting of the first Gulf War. And that whole process of how you build alliances, how you determine what you can do within the constraints of international law, how you have to limit some of your goals in line with that, and then how you develop resilience to deal with the most extended sort of period of tension and dealing with the subjects. One of the more memorable bits of that Gulf War was being on a plane with the then Prime Minister, John Major, just come in, taken over from Mrs. Thatcher. And I was with the minister, and you can remember the end of the Gulf War was, it lasted for, I think, 42 days of tremendous fighting. But there were lots of unfinished businesses, and one of the difficulties was what happened to the Kurds in the north of Iraq, where Iraqi forces were still bombing them. And on that plane flight, it was just John Major, me, and the minister. We came up then with the idea that then became entrenched a few days later, which was an operation called Provide Comfort, which was essentially the Allied forces protecting the Kurds. Why was that interesting? Well, it sort of came up a little bit haphazardly. Interesting how ideas do come up, but also it was working again with what is possible in international law to do what is really necessary. So, and then just so that we didn't relapse the next summer, think of August 1991 was when the hardline communists tried to topple Gorbachev, and Yeltsin stood on that tank in front of the parliament and effectively stopped the coup in Moscow. But it was, they were heady years in many ways. It was an extraordinary set of changes going on. We're living through the middle of, I think, even more momentous changes. But it was revealing just how quickly the world used to go. There was a wonderful moment when my minister, sitting around the table with other ministers, and they said, well, they were talking about how things were a little bit difficult in some of their areas. And he said, well, in my area, Bhutan is all right. Just about everything was aflame. I mean, there was the most sort of extraordinary set of upheavals going on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That's interesting. Any interesting experience you had in India, particularly during your posting there as a British High Commissioner?
Well, completely different ends in a sort of perfectly human way. I think it was one of the must be amongst the most wonderful 4 years of my time. You are blessed in India with, I think, one of the most wonderful, varied, exciting countries. I'm not just flattering you, it is unquestionably true. So the privilege we had, or the opportunity we had of exploring, and we did explore, and we took a huge number of opportunities to do that. The length and breadth and variety of country, with everything that your culture offers, culture in the broadest sense, was just fantastic. Unfortunately, when it comes to a game that we both love, cricket, it coincided with the sort of ups and the downs. We had, I think, the real down was a test series, which the English team really did not do very well. So sitting through 4 or 5 days of a test match, watching the sort of inevitable strangulation of the English test team by your wonderful team was not, in some ways, the most enjoyable bits. The most testing, I suppose, memorable was, of course, I was there when you suffered attacks from across the border in Pakistan. Now, I know these are highly sensitive things, but it was where we come as two countries right up against each other, close to close, as it were, shoulder to shoulder. And it taught me just how, again, I mean, living in the Middle East, West Asia, there's just endless, very deep sensitivities. But in the Indian context, just how important those personal relationships are when those extremely perilous circumstances arise, and how two countries and other countries have to find ways to work in support of each other, because that's fundamentally what diplomacy is there. It is also, it is a positive in the sense it finds opportunities, but it's also the most important insurance mechanism for so many people to make sure that the risks are contained.
Thank you very much to both of you for sharing these insightful experiences. I will now move on to my second question, where I would like to know from you and to hear from you your views on the future of India-UK relations as we are entering a new era, hopefully post-COVID and of course post-Brexit. Your views, ma'am.
India-UK relations, in my view, I think there is an enormous potential that that we can work towards. We have a very wide-ranging relationship that covers almost every aspect of a bilateral relationship, because we have excellent political relationship, we have a good trade where we can do much more. We have very vibrant investment from both countries into each other. We have, for India, a very successful diaspora living in the UK, and which is contributing, in fact, enormously to UK's economy, as well as to building relations between the two countries. In fact, one of the things that we did during the stay that I had in UK was to try and measure the economic contribution of the Indian diaspora to UK's economy. And we could only study actually 654 companies that were, the study was done with Grant Thornton and FICCI UK. So they could study only 654 companies with a turnover of about 100,000 or above, and the combined revenues of these 650 odd companies was 36.84 billion, and they contributed £1 billion, and they contributed 174,000 jobs. They paid £1 billion in corporate tax, and £2 billion was the investment in capital expenditure that they had made. Now, this is separate from the contribution which the major companies from India who have invested in UK make. So enormous contribution. But this is not all, because we have a good relationship, in the science and technology field. There's enormous innovation taking place in the UK. We have a relationship, in terms of defense procurements, and multiple areas, whether it's culture or one of the most interesting things that we did towards the end of my tenure was a sari walk in the London Fashion Week when we did the India Day, which Vishakha, you were so instrumental in putting together. Then very vibrant relationship with the City of London, where the first ever India Day was organized by Lord Mayor of City of London, and the then Prime Minister of UK and the Minister for Commerce and Industry from India represented our two countries there. So enormous amount of work. Education is another field. I mean, how many Indian students are studying, and the numbers are going up. I'm sure Dominic would be better placed to talk about it. So I think post-Brexit, there are enormous opportunities. UK definitely wants to look, beyond Europe, and India is an important country in that regard. And we hope that with the, post-COVID and with all these developments taking place, that our relationship will start working towards achieving the potential that it truly has. Our good political relationship is surely going to help us in doing that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for those insights. Sir, your views on that?
Ruchi's mentioned the word potential twice, and I underline that. I mean, this is a plus and not a minus, but it's a frustration or a disappointment. It has massive potential, and it's always been recognized. It's been recognized for years as massive potential. Maybe because the potential is set so high, the expectations are high, it's very difficult to reach those, and we haven't reached those. I'm being wholly honest. But that is as it were, the challenge and the test that I think both sides have always set each other or set themselves, that the potential should be translated into the actual. So how you do that is still as it were, the challenge. Ruchi quite rightly points out those areas where actually that challenge, I think, has been met. If you look at the mutual investment of investments in each other, the figures are extraordinary. The UK has been pretty well from the beginning of this millennium, the biggest G20 investor in India, and Indian companies have invested more in the UK than the whole of the EU put together. So the strengths are extraordinary, and in particular sectors. Again, Ruchi mentioned innovation, quite right. It's the innovative entrepreneurship, funding, financial sector, the fintech and so on,
Yes.
but where there is just an extraordinary combination of skill, talent, and ambition. And those two are really important. But I just want to go a little bit wider than that in terms of what the relationship is. I think where you rightly said, we are in an extraordinary point, sort of fulcrum point in global terms. And if you look, and this is potentially a little bit provocative, but it's not meant to be, but if you look at a decade ahead where the influence of the US may decline somewhat in relative terms, and the influence of China will either maybe plateau or increase, debatable, but it's a different context post-COVID. It's a different context that we'll be operating in globally. And there's a group of countries, you can call them middle power entrepreneurs in a sense, of which, Japan, India, obviously, South Korea, I'd put the UK, France, Germany, and a number of others, Australia, into that category, who need to work together. There will be collaborators, natural collaborators. There may be disruptors in that category too, not in the category I've mentioned, but other countries who will see the opportunity that will open up in this new world ahead of us, the new geostrategic context. But the collaborators have to work out why and how, on what to collaborate. And fundamentally, I remain an optimist on this one, that they will collaborate because they share a common sense of global goods and how to protect them and how to deal with the challenges that are not just facing individual countries, but on a global scale. Obviously, climate is a big one, the biggest one of all. But free trade and ensuring the opportunists or the disruptors don't have a free rein or don't intrude onto areas where they shouldn't, either sectoral or geographic. So I think this scope for a group of countries having inevitably a sort of rather fluid, or what we call variable geometry in terms of the relationships on particular subjects, it may be varied subjects, and it will change over the course of the decade, is one of the most important and one of the most exciting prospects ahead of us. And I would put India, and I would certainly hope the UK, in that category of countries who will need to, in a sense, generate that collaboration, convene the fora for determining what groups of countries can do together in partnership.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir, for that. And respecting the time you have contributed today and given us your time. Just lastly, I would like to know whether you are enjoying this time away from the hectic schedule, the back-to-back meetings, too much of movement. Are you enjoying this time? And your last words of encouragement for the young IFS officers who are going to join the service or have joined the service in these enormously challenging times.
So should I start, or you want Dominic to start? Okay.
Sir can start, or
okay, let Dominic start because I started for the other two questions.
Am I enjoying it? I wish I could say it was. I mean, yes, I am enjoying it, and I will be absolutely honest. I'm enjoying it for a number of reasons. I mean, I find what I'm doing at the moment. I've gone back into the private sector. Working with a wonderful company on some really fascinating strategic consultancy stuff, some of which I just mentioned in terms of those sort of middle power stuff, of helping clients, governments, corporates work out how to position themselves over the next decade. So I find it massively stimulating. To be ruthlessly honest, what I also like is being able to choose how I spend my time. There's an awful lot of diplomacy, which is fantastically good fun. Most of it is, but there's quite a lot of it where you do end up having to do, because the job requires it, to do things that maybe you wouldn't choose to do. They are necessarily important, but what I love about this one is that you have the freedom to do it. But encouragement, I would just pick out three words. I think your foreign minister has mentioned this word about the importance of Indian diplomacy being agile, with agility. I think that is so important in the current context that I just talked about. The need to be responsive to circumstances because they're changing and they're very different from what we've experienced before. The need to set your objectives in the wider context. The need to listen to what other people are worrying about and what their challenges and how they affect you. So agility, I think, is absolutely spot on. The Arabs have a phrase called khafif ad-dam, which is light-blooded. There's sort of, you can be heavy-blooded or light-blooded. And I would just say light-bloodedness, for me, is, again, one of the most important things, and just keep in mind. You've got to make people look forward to seeing you, not dreading the experience of having to come to see you as a diplomat. And you have a wonderful, who's sadly just died, Shankar Bajpai, a wonderful example, I think, of style in Indian diplomacy. He was the consummate diplomat. He was so wise, so learned, so gentle, but so clear, and had fantastic style. So style is important. What people see in you is how they look at your country. And if you've got to be conscious always of how others perceive your country and its characteristics. And if you can make them think of it in a slightly different way, get over the stereotypes, it is really important. So lightness of blood, and lastly, never lie. It's all about trust and respect. This job, if you lose it, you never win it back. So honesty. Okay, you may not give the whole truth, but honesty is probably the most important lodestone that has guided me through my time.
Thank you so much, sir. Absolutely agreeable and amazing words of encouragement from your side. Ma'am, your words.
So what, it's about the future? No.
Are you enjoying your time?
I'm enjoying my time. Yes. I sorry. I listening to Dominic, I was so fascinated that I forgot what your question was. Yes, I am enjoying my time, but I think I've not really had time to settle down because it was the move took place in the middle of a pandemic. So I think there is a beautiful future ahead, but I'm still trying to find it. But I do enjoy the fact that my time is my own. If I go for a walk, in the morning and I feel tired and I want to take a nap, well, there's nothing to stop me. I can take a nap at that moment. I don't have to worry that I have office to go to or I think that part I agree with Dominic, that having freedom over one's time is very important. Having said that, I have to also say that I've spent 38 years in the foreign service, and life has become like, it was almost like the official life became my personal life. And I think I have, one has to, that dissociation has to take some time. I don't know if there's something wrong with the audio, Vishakha.
Sorry for the interruption, ma'am. Some video was unmuted.
Okay.
Please go on.
Yes, I think it takes some time to really understand that now one is free of the obligations of office and one can do precisely the way one would like to live. The message to the younger generation of foreign service, I would say that by choosing to join the foreign service of any country, a person makes a very wise choice. I mean, if I had to live my life all over again, I probably, in fact, almost I'm certain of that I would make the same choices. I mean, sometimes I wonder, there are people who have more money, they live in maybe fancier houses, they have better cars, which, being in the government service, of course, you have certain limitations on how you live. But having said that, I absolutely think that my life, or the life of any diplomat for that matter, is really a very good life, because it's a good balance between the kind of wonderful people that you meet, the exposure that you get, the widening of the horizons that takes place. I mean, you're no longer a frog in the well, literally so, because you're going from one country to another, dealing with one region and then with another. So I think this is really one of probably the best career choice that one can make. I agree with Dominic absolutely about honesty. It's very important. People are generally led to believe that diplomats are people who are sent abroad to lie for their country. I would hesitate to give that advice to people, because end of the day, it's about building trust and confidence in yourself. Every diplomat, every interlocutor must have a certain credibility, and you cannot earn that credibility if you just lie through your teeth. Yes, sometimes you have to say a certain part of the story, but I'm sure the other side knows that there is more to that story. From one's own side, one has to always try and remain factual and truthful. There is a very different world that's opening up right in front of our eyes every single day. The current pandemic is one manifestation of that. I mean, a small market or wherever it was that this virus came out, and look at what has happened to the whole world, lockdown upon lockdown. So there is a globally very highly integrated world that we are living in. And now with all this work from home, use of technology, I think new kinds of crimes are going to come up, new ways of working have to be discovered, and new relationships, new ways of building relationships have to be developed. And therefore, again, I agree with Dominic, and of course with our External Affairs Minister. Agility is very important, because one has to, not just the way one works, but the way the structure of the world is changing. And that is again something that we are, history being made is being made in front of our eyes. And so therefore agility is very, very important. India is definitely going to be, is a very important country, and in future going to be even more important. I don't see any other way for it in the future. And I also agree with Dominic that India and UK can be closer partners and with some of the other countries or many other countries that he spoke about would be playing an important role in the world of tomorrow. So those who have made the choice to be in the Foreign Service today, I think they have a very, very exciting time waiting for them. I hope they are ready for it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you very much, both of you, for sharing your experiences. And it was an absolute pleasure for me to have an interaction and discussion with you on this significant day, Indian Foreign Service Day. And you have given us a lot of food for thought. We will keep that, and I really respect and I will cherish that. And we will post this video on our social media. And thank you very much for your time once again.
Pleasure and good
Thank
luck.
you.